Today's lesson is about surface finishes, which is all about how we make sure a product starts to kind of look like it's completed and make it look the way it's meant to, as if you would buy it in a shop. So our starter for today, we would ordinarily be looking at titles, but then the questions to think about today are how do you make a product look professionally completed, and what happens if you leave wood or metal outside? So if you were to make a product look professional, when you just finish it and you make it, it doesn't look done. It doesn't look finished, and we have to do something to the material, usually to the surface of it, to make it look completed. And the last thing is, what would happen if you leave metal or wood outside? Well, some metals will oxidize and they go rusty. And if you leave wood outside, obviously bacteria, microbes, and organisms will start to eat its way through that organic material, and the wood will then start to rot. So that's what we need to try and think about when we talk about surface finishes. So today we're going to understand the steps you need to prepare materials for applying a finish. You need to be familiar with the main finishes used for wood and metal. Plastic we'll get onto. It's a bit of an exception, and the best would be to create a suitably high quality finish on a wooden component. Obviously, that's something we can't do because we're not in the workshop, but we would be doing it, and we're going to teach you how to do that through the use of some lovely videos as well. Okay, so here's my first scenario. So imagine, if you will, that I have just made myself a lovely new kitchen table, a nicely sanded pine top, and then I make myself a cup of tea. And as I move my tea from my kettle to the table, a little bit rolls over the top and dribbles down the side. What was that going to do to my tabletop? That would, as I put it down, that moisture from the tea or coffee would seep into the grain of the wood. As we discussed it, that's what happens when you try and steam bend wood. The moisture would go in, but because that tea and coffee has a color, has a pigment to it, that would then stain that piece of grain. And the only way to get rid of that would be to sand it down again. You can't wipe it off because it's actually soaked into the wood itself. Scenario number two. So my brand new kitchen tabletop, my young daughter starts writing on a piece of paper with a biro. Now she doesn't draw on the table because she's quite good at not drawing on the table, but she's pushing quite hard. So what do you think might happen to the top of my table? That's right. It starts to, as you push, the pressure from the pen will start to mark that pine. Because pine's not the hardest material, if you push it hard enough and you dig into it, it will mark that tabletop. So her writing will be imprinted onto that tabletop. So this is these are two of the reasons why you might start using finishes on our material. So reasons we use finishes. Reason number one is it will change the way it looks. So aesthetics means the way something looks. So it will make your wood grain look nicer. It will make it look shiny or have a matte sheen. It will just generally make it look and feel smoother. Then the second main reason is for protection. Okay, so the finish, the surface finish that we apply to wood and also metals as well, will seal the material. So it will stop stains, stop discoloration, and it stops moisture getting into the material, so it prevents rusting and rotting as well. So there's two main reasons why we apply a surface finish, and that's pretty much what they are. So the next task we're going to talk about the steps that you need to apply a finish. So we are talking about our little laminated phone holder, and if you watch the 4 videos that are on that link, that will then show you how to apply a finish. They're a bit long. You can feel free to skip the sanding. you will need to know what those steps are. Now, the steps tend to be very similar for most finishes. Some of the metal finishes are more complicated than this, but if you're finishing a wood, this is how it happens. And make sure you understand that. And the keywords, one of the keywords is the word key. So you would key the surface, make it rougher, or make sure it's not too smooth, and make sure it's clean, to make sure that that finish will stick to the material or soak in properly to the material. So that's what we key the surface. But that will be covered in the videos, so have a little watch. Okay, the last task today is what can we use? So we talked about finishes generally, but what actual finishes can we use? So you're going to search the internet for a range of products that use different finishes. And what you're going to do is you're going to try and find out the names of those finishes and where they might be used. So you can see on the pictures below, you can see there's a piano. It's got a really high gloss finish. You can see the grain of the wood really nicely. The next picture over is some garden furniture. So obviously that's not as shiny looking, but obviously it goes outside. So what suitable finish would be used on that to keep it looking the right way? Next picture over is the front door. Obviously that finish, you can't see the grain of the wood at all. It's had something put on it that covers it up completely, and obviously you'll use that for a certain reason, as opposed to using the first finish that you saw on the piano. The last one is an interesting one. That's a chopping board. Now, chopping boards have to be hygienic, and turning a piece of wood and making a piece of wood, putting a finish on it that is also food safe is quite a tricky one. So you need to work out what ones you could put on it quite easily and happily, which is going to stop it from rotting and make it look nice, that aren't going to stop it from being food safe. If you were to use finish number 1, for example, on for the piano on the chopping board, then that isn't food safe. So your food would get contaminated with chemicals that are used inside the first finish there, and then that would be an issue. So using the right finish, knowing what finishes to use and why, and the specific finishes is really, really important to know, and that's what you need to find out for yourself based on the 4 pictures that are on that slide. And finally, we're going to talk about 4 finishes for metal, just to keep it in context and expand what you know. Again, search the internet. So the first picture there is they are aluminium pedals that you would put onto a bicycle. And obviously aluminium is usually a silvery color, a grey silvery color, but that one for some reason is orange. How do they do that? What finish can you put on aluminium that gives it a color? Search it up, see what you can find. The next one over, the little bucket there, that's made from steel, but obviously steel goes rusty. But this particular finish, used on buckets and bins and things like that, stops it from going rusty. You might find it on lots of outdoor things. Worth having a look. Try and find out what that is. The next picture over is obviously some kind of chair that's having something done to it, quite obviously, to make it a different color. Maybe protect it from being from moisture from getting it rusty. And the last picture over here, it looks like it's got a similar finish. The red finish on there looks similar to what the person's doing to the chair next to it, but it's got a thickness to it. It's actually not what you think. So try and think about, try and research that. So how would you put? It's actually got quite a lot. It's a lot thicker. You might dip it into something, and you're dipping it into another material, not necessarily a paint or anything like that. So have a search for that one, see what you can find, and hopefully it will expand what you know about finishes. And also when you buy stuff, you'll understand what's on it and how they do that as well, which is quite interesting as well. There's no homework, so hooray.